Dajuan Harris versus Boogie Fland, Hunter Dickinson versus Big Z. What player matchups could determine Kansas versus Arkansas in round one of the NCAA tournament?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show, whether you're finding us on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show, or anywhere that you get your podcasts on the audio side of things. On today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to go a little deep dives into some of the detailed looks about what makes players on both sides of this, Kansas, Arkansas, makes them tick, and where they excel, where they struggle, what it can tell us about the individuals and about the individual matchups we're going to have between Kansas and Arkansas that could determine which team moves on Thursday night in Providence. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Kansas takes on Arkansas Thursday night, and let's get started with the guards, because some very interesting matchups here that you're looking at from the exhibition game where Arkansas's guards torched Kansas. And after the game, Bill Self had very complimentary things to say about the Arkansas guards, that they would be as good of a group as Kansas played all season long. Now, I don't know that came to fruition. The Houston guards are really good, and, there's some other teams, Iowa State, the guards that were really good, even North Carolina, even though they didn't have the season they were hoping for, still had pretty good guards. So I think that I don't know where I would put this one if you're just talking like pure athleticism. This one is certainly up there. It's still a good backcourt, but they've been injured, and so it's hard to exactly tell. And it's also hard to tell because what is exactly going to be the status of Boogie Fland in this game? It sounds like, according to John Calipari, Boogie Fland, who averaged over 15 points per game so far this season, is going to be back coming from his injury. But to what level are we talking here? Are we talking he's just able to play 5-10 minutes in the game? Are we talking he's given 35 minutes and he looks like the same guy? Or are we talking he's going to play 25, but he's not going to be the same efficient player and he's going to have to shake some rust off? There's a lot of levels to this about what they're going to get from Boogie Fland, how that affects the matchups, how that affects the games, how that affects who guards who on both ends of the floor. So I'm very interested to see how that all goes. But when you look at the guard group, I think in general, you still know Arkansas has some guys that can beat you there, whether Boogie Fland is to the top level of what he normally is or not. Johnell Davis, who's been a very successful player in the NCAA tournament, and DJ Wagner, who is a former 5-star recruit who certainly can go off at a moment's notice. And from the Kansas perspective, there's also the added element of injury for their guards, because Shaq Moore, is he going to play in this game? Bill Self had some comments about him, maybe being able to practice recently that makes you think that maybe he's going to have an opportunity to. And again, like, that's something where it's like, well, Shaq Moore, it's not like, he had ingrained himself as being a 30-minute per game guy outside of the first few games he was playing. Are you really going to throw him in there to a moment like this after not playing for a while? I don't know. But then you look at the matchup where you're playing an Arkansas team that can really use those guards to their advantage. Wouldn't having another guard who can, if he is healthy, be a good defender in Shaq Moore, wouldn't that be very helpful? The other problem, though, is when Shaq Moore tried to play through the injury, he wasn't the same effective guy on the defensive end. Now, when I look at those Arkansas guards, so looking at Boogie Fland, a couple things stick out in looking at Boogie Fland's game. So 18 games played, maybe a little bit smaller of a sample size in terms of what you're going for here. Boogie Fland only shot 41% at the rim this season. That is 7th percentile for guards. He was really good on that floater area. He was really good in the mid-range so far this season. He was really good on corner threes. It was only 16 attempts, but he went 18 of 16. But that becomes interesting to me, because it is something where it's like, okay, knowing that Kansas sometimes plays drop coverage with Hunter Dickinson, Boogie Fland will eat you apart, because he will make and take those mid-range and floaters. You're almost better off this time playing a higher line with the back end if you are Kansas. And you look at Dajuan Harris, like, how can he try to, if that is the matchup, slow him down? You look at Dajuan Harris recently. Over his last 5 games, Dajuan Harris is only in the 32nd percentile in steal rate on the defensive end of the floor. For the season, it's 72nd percentile. So can Dajuan, find a way to get back to that nominator? What I do think about the other end of the court is interesting, because Dajuan, over his last 5 games, is shooting 63% from 3-point range. Now, that is on low volume, to say the least, but it's better that it's happening than it's not. One thing, though, that I do find interesting here, too, is Dajuan's turnover rate this season is 31st percentile. That is not a good number. And over the last 5, it is the 11th percentile. He's got to do a better job taking care of the basketball this game against Arkansas and Boogie Fland. You look at some of the other guards that come out in this one with Johnell Davis, who Davis has not had quite the season as some of his past years at FAU, but he still is dangerous when you look at his past NCAA tournament resume. And so for Kansas, it becomes, okay, he's a little bit taller, lengthier of a guard. Who is going to be guarding him if you're Kansas? Is that a Zeke Mayo assignment? And if it is Zeke Mayo, can he step up? Because Zeke Mayo has had some unbelievable offensive games, hasn't always been known for the defensive side of the basketball, right? And so what are you going to get from Zeke Mayo on the defensive end of the floor in that specific matchup against Johnell Davis, who's really good on those pick and roll situations? One thing of note, though, for Zeke Mayo, he's 87th percentile over his last 5 games in free throw attempt rate. He's done a great job at getting to the free throw line recently for KU. He also is in the 99th percentile over his last 5 in 3-point percentage, 74th in free throw percentage, 99th in true shooting percentage. But the defensive numbers, the steal rate, the block rate, the assist turnover rate, those things do not rate out super well. So again, that becomes a very interesting match. The other matchup of note here is with DJ Wagner. So Wagner is somebody who does shoot better at the rim, 61% at the rim this season. He's also in the 69th percentile in mid-range twos and 58th percentile at above the break threes at 34%. He's been really bad from the corner and hasn't really taken a ton of corner threes so far this season, though, to begin with. And so who defends, maybe it's Harris on Wagner, but then who defends Fland? And if, basically it's a situation where is Kansas going to play more 3-guard looks, or we can see more Diggy Coit out there to kind of match up with the 3-guard and 3-guard, or are you going to have like a Rylan Griffen out there on one of these guards? That too becomes interesting. And when you look at it, Rylan Griffen may be more used to defending, wings who are going to be in the corner. But that's not the case for DJ Wagner. That's not the case for Boogie Fland. Now, it is a little bit more the case with Johnell Davis, who's attempted 42 corner threes. That's more than the 39 combined by Wagner and Fland. And again, part of that is because Fland was injured for a little bit there. But point being, maybe it makes sense to put Rylan Griffen on Johnell Davis, right? If Davis is a little bit taller and he shoots more corner threes than the other guys, maybe that's where it makes a little bit more sense to kind of battle that way if you are Kansas. And we mentioned Rylan Griffen, some of his recent struggles here for KU. They're trying to get him going. Right now, he is in the first percentile in 2-point percentage over his last 5, 8th percentile in 3-point percentage over his last 5, 5th percentile and free throw percentage over his last 5, and first percentile and steal percentage over his last 5. It'll be very interesting to me what the leash is for Bill Self in this game. And going back to this matchup of the guards, at what point does Shaq Moore factor in with that injury that we just kind of talked about? Is that the guy who loses out minutes to Shaq Moore if he is able to play a good load? Would it be Rylan Griffen? And then beyond that, what does this mean for Diggy Coit? Typically with Diggy, it's okay, he's going to come out and shoot 2 or 3 threes. If he's 0 for 3, that might be it for him, right? Unless DeJuan Harris really needs a spell. If he comes out and he's 2 for 2, he might play 30 minutes in that specific game. And maybe that's kind of what this comes down to. It'll be interesting to me too, because Diggy is a smaller guard and those Arkansas guards are a little bigger. Wagner's 6'3", Johnell Davis is like 6'4", Boogie Fland is 6'2", 6'3". So they have a little bit of height there. They have the athleticism, and Diggy Coit was 0 for 5 in that exhibition matchup. Now maybe that was just the lights were bright, tough road environment, right? When you're coming from playing a JUCO ball in Northern Illinois, and now he's a little bit more used to it. So I'll be very interested to see these guard matchups specifically. It might not be as star power driven as the big matchups, which we'll get to here in a second, but it might be the most important matchups of the game. All right, let's keep this going with the bigs. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. They have cost-effective growth, which means instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com, Upwork.com, UPWORK.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online, right from your couch, and you can get covered in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. It's beyond life insurance, too. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege, MEET, fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions with Fabric. I continue on with the show. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Anywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget you can check out Locked On College Basketball as well, and get you ready for the NCAA tournament, not just from the Kansas-Arkansas perspective, but from everything else kind of going on. All right, the other matchups occur at the big position here, and obviously the big one here, Hunter Dickinson for KU, who just got named a third-team All-American recently, and, had Kansas been better, who knows what he would have been named at the end of the season. But Hunter right now is playing well. He, over his last 5 games, 78th percentile in offensive rebound rate. He's shooting 43% from 3 over those last 5 games. The 2-point percentage has been a bit more inconsistent. It's actually below average for his position, 53.5% on 2s. He shot free throws well, though, 76%. The assist percentage really good, 88th percentile for centers, 79th percentile in steal rate for centers, 59th in block rate. Really the only thing that hasn't come across, I guess the 2-point shooting has been, closer to average, but that has more to do with teams just swarming him, I think, has been the turnover rate. Hasn't been good over the last 5 games. Also the free throw attempt rate, which that one's just been one where Hunter just can't get calls. I don't know what it is. That's just kind of a thing that continues on, but he's going to have his hands full in this matchup, and I'll be curious to see who guards him and who he guards on the defensive end. So you look at Arkansas, it's 3 main bigs that they're going to use: Trayvon Brazile, Jonas Idu, and Big Z. I don't even want to try to pronounce the first name, but Avicic is the last name. And you look at all of those guys, they're all 6'10" or taller. Idu is a really good rim protector defender, but Hunter had his way with him in the third place game of the Maui Invitational last year when Idu was at Tennessee. When you look at Avicic, he is somebody who, was shooting threes well in the exhibition game, and he can stretch it and shoot threes at a really high level. So that becomes interesting on the offensive end against Hunter. He's also 7'2", so can he match up well enough? Even though I think I would view him as a better defender than Avicic, but Avicic is bigger to contend with Hunter Dickinson. So how do you go between those two? Or do you go with Trayvon Brazile, right? And Brazile, kind of the same thing of Avicic, where it's he can shoot the 3 on the offensive side of the ball. And on the defensive side, he's more of a mobile defender, so I envision him being more at the 4. I think it's kind of a combo of Idu and Avicic who would be guarding Hunter. And then I think for Hunter, he's going to be guarding Idu. The question is, what happens if they throw a lineup of Brazile and Avicic out? Because then at that point, they have one big who you're going to basically have to just live with making or shooting threes and hope like heck that they're missing them that game. Because the hope is that KJ can guard the other one. But that's where it comes into play too with KJ Adams versus the other one of those bigs, because KJ is 6'7", and those other bigs are just bigger than him at being, a 2-big lineup, so to speak. So that becomes interesting. Are those guys going to be able to, work him in the post? KJ always did a good job as an undersized big when he was, playing the 5, playing the center position for KU a couple of years ago. So I don't have as much worry about that necessarily. I would if it's Avicic on him, because that's 7-inch advantage. But if it's Brazile or Idu, that's a 3-inch advantage. If they're trying to post him up, I'm not overly worried about that. You do need KJ's ability to get out on them and stop those spot up threes. The problem is KJ's best role as a defender is almost being like an on-ball defender and being a switchable defender and being a weak side defender. When you have guys who are spotting up from three, that's where, KJ might run into, I gave up a three because I'm trying to cover for this other person messing this up or something like that. So it becomes a very difficult matchup, I think, for the KU bigs on the defensive end of the court. And yeah, you look at that for Arkansas so far this season. So Ivisic is shooting 75% at the rim, but he's only attempted 47 field goals at the rim. That's not his game. Out of comparison, Karter Knox, their freshman, who has played 783 minutes in 33 games, he is attempted 49 at the rim. DJ Wagner's attempted 84 shots at the rim. Boogie Fland hasn't played in like 15 games, and he's attempted 34 shots, almost as many as Ivisic at the rim. And so you look further down the numbers, Ivisic has taken 99 above the break threes. That's 37%. That really stresses your spacing getting out there. And 24 corner threes at 42%. So that's where, part of that comes. Trayvon Brazil, a guy who's shooting 93% at the rim this season, but it's like all dunks. Like that's all he does. He's not really looking to post up necessarily and score there. Only 14 more shots in the paint, but he's taken 24 above the break threes, 46%, 27 corner threes at 37%. So that is where the challenge is for the KU defense. How do you go about guarding those guys? I legit think it makes sense to almost play zone against Arkansas, but I don't think Bill Self's going to do that. I don't know. I guess I take that back. We've seen Bill Self in some big moments throughout junk defenses, as he calls them, for maybe 5-10 minute stretches. I think it would make a lot of sense to do it in a game like this. We'll see if that ends up happening. It doesn't happen like that often, but I do think it makes a little bit of sense on the defensive end. And then you could have, Hunter in the middle, or you could almost even this is where the three big lineup, I've not been a fan of it all year in modern basketball, but if ever you were going to use the 3-game lineup, this might be the game that makes the most sense. Maybe it doesn't when they're playing 3 guards next to each other, but when Karter Knox is out there at the 3 for them, and Karter Knox so far this season, he's a good young freshman. He's shooting 28% on above the break threes. He is shooting very well on corner threes, 39%. But if you're playing a 2-3 zone and you're playing 3 bigs where Flory's on one side, KJ's on the other, against a team who has 2 bigs, I don't hate that, actually, if I'm Kansas. Again, though, I don't think that's going to happen with Bill Self. I wonder if this could be a huge game for Flory Bidunga, because you do think about it, and part of the problem I will say with Flory, he shows flashes of being a mobile defender to being able to get out on guys on the perimeter, but he also is still a freshman. And so he's also still learning, and sometimes off the ball, he can get lost, especially if his guy can't shoot. And so this could go either way. His mobility, if he's locked in and is able to find his guy, could be a huge benefit to KU playing against the 2 bigs for Arkansas, with 1 or 2 of them at all times on the court being able to shoot. On the flip side, though, if he does get lost, it becomes a problem for the KU defense. So it is a big opportunity for Flory, and we'll see where that one kind of goes with things. And then you look at it, those bigs for Arkansas do a pretty good job of defending in the paint, which is obviously where Kansas wants to go with the basketball to that big man. So I think very intriguing matchups between all of the big men here on both teams. How do they match up? How does the 3-point shooting of the Arkansas bigs affect the Kansas big? And then at the other end, if Hunter Dickinson's going to continue to shoot like this from 3 that we saw in the Big 12 tournament, it presents a similar problem that Arkansas is going to provide for KU. So I think a lot of interesting matchups there between these 2 teams and down in the post. What about at the wing position? That's kind of the forgotten position for KU at this point in time, but it won't be forgotten in this game. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money, you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. It has the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with Monarch Money.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, so thank you to the guys from Locked On College Basketball. Don't forget to check that out for your second listen every day. We'll have a Kansas-Arkansas official preview on tomorrow's episode. Tomorrow morning it'll come out. Obviously, you'll have time to listen to that or watch it before the game, anywhere that you get this here with Locked On Jayhawks. All right, the last player matchup here we got to get to is the wings between these two teams. And for Kansas, a lot of times this year they really haven't had consistent wing play. We've seen moments from Rylan Griffen. We've seen moments from AJ Storr, a little less so for Storr, although recently, even one or two for Storr has been more than we've seen from Griffen. Kind of depends if you count Zeke Mayo in some of the three-guard lineups as a wing. I don't. But, Marquise Passmore, it's been very, very limited playing time. So we haven't really seen that from Kansas this year. The interesting thing about Arkansas is, yes, they do have, Karter Knox. They also have Billy Richmond, who you could count as a guard, you could count as a wing. He's a big physical 6'5" guard/forward. I kind of count him as a wing because of his physicality and the way he plays. Not really a big three-point shooter. So this one, to me, more so becomes about the wing position is the position that can be like the found money in this game a little bit. Not as much the case with Karter Knox, who we mentioned is a good player. But also he's somebody who, because he shoots so well on corner threes, it becomes imperative that you don't just lose him in the corner as the fourth or fifth piece on offense, and then boom, all of a sudden Karter Knox hits 3 corner threes in the game that ends up being the difference for you. On the flip side of things, for Kansas, Rylan Griffen, we mentioned some of his stats, earlier over these recent games. Like, they need to find a way to get him going in a very real way. Even with his struggles lately, he still is shooting, 33% on above the break threes, 35% in the corner. This would be a great game for Rylan Griffen to kind of get out of his slump. The other big question becomes, what are you going to get from AJ Storr? Are you going to get the guy from the Big 12 quarterfinal or the Big 12 second round? Or are you going to get the guy from the Big 12 quarterfinals? And if you get the guy from the Big 12 second round, I think it becomes something where, I don't know, I guess Kansas had to win in overtime over UCF, even having it, but that would be such a huge boon to trying to win. It is crazy looking at the last 5 game stats, by the way, for AJ Storr. 59th percentile in effective field goal percentage, so, slightly above average there. 72nd percentile in free throw attempt rate. 75th percentile in three-point percentage. He's shooting 37.5% from 3 over the last 5 games. 58th percentile in true shooting percentage, but then 0th percentile in offensive rebound percentage over the last 5 because he has 0. 23rd percentile in turnover percentage, too many there. 35th percentile in free throw percentage for his position. 15th percentile in assist rate. 2nd percentile in assist to turnover percentage. 0th percentile because he has 0 in steals. And 12th percentile in block rate. If that doesn't sum up the AJ Storr experience, I don't know what does. It's just it's scoring when he's on and you ain't getting nothing else. You better hope that the scoring is on. And maybe this, maybe that last week at least gives him a little bit of confidence to do something in a moment like this. But I do think on paper, you look at Arkansas, just having Karter Knox, a known commodity, Billy Richmond, and doing what he's going to provide, that gives them the leg up in terms of those wing players. But if instead of Karter Knox being the guy who's lethal from the corner, if that switches to Rylan Griffen in a game like this, maybe that's the seesaw. Maybe that's the change in this matchup of what could be a close game, right? If Rylan Griffen's 2 for 3 in the corner and Karter Knox is 0 for 2 or 1 for 3, maybe that's the one, big thing that gets Kansas over the hump in a game like this into the second round. But we'll talk more about this game, what Arkansas does well, what they don't do well, headlines coming into the game, keys for the game for KU, all that and plenty more on tomorrow's KU Arkansas preview right here with Locked On Jayhawks, anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. See you next time.